And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus on this Thursday afternoon, June 19th. And temperatures out there in the lower 80s right now. We had a few scattered showers earlier, but those have moved off. We're looking at plenty of sunshine out there. But we're going to destabilize that atmosphere, and we're going to see some more storms overnight. Looks like some of these are going to be on the strong to severe side as well. More on that in just a bit. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director Bridgette Readel. She's in studio today, and welcome back.
Thanks.
And our mascot.
I brought Cooper, the mascot, in for the day as well because, I've been on the road for just a little while, and I thought I'd swing in, see how things are here.
Hold the fort down for us.
See you in a while.
Right.
I'll be back. I think I'm in one day next week. I am, because we have one of our assistant ag directors is joining us next Tuesday. And again, if you have students who have an interest in radio communications, ag communications, etc., even if they're just thinking someday I might be a good salesman, we would love to have students join us here on air. I choose a student every month to be our intern for the day. They participate in our discussion on headlines. They interview guests, and they see all the background that happens when you are in studio at a radio station.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Send us those notices. I've got an application form for kids, and love to have them fill it out. High school sophomores to college sophomores.
Great. Good deal. Mm-hmm. Good deal. You've had some smart kids on here, too.
Well, I try to choose the ones that can talk. Those that want to stand and nod.
That's helps.
Sort of a problem in this show.
A big part of the show, no doubt about it. Well, we are doing our great grocery giveaway. We're qualifying people for the big $10,000 prize we'll be giving away on July 10th. And let's get today's qualifier a chance early off here. So we're looking for Angie. Angie, I hope I pronounce your last name right. Verelrude. Verelrude. That's right. Angie Verelrude of Horace. Angie, you have 9 minutes and 70 seconds to call. If you know Angie, just make sure, text her. Say, hey, you got to call in.
She's not like a Tim Anderson. That name's going to stand out.
Well, yeah.
People should know who she is.
So Angie Verelrude from Horace. Angie, you have 9 minutes and 70 seconds to call 701-293-9000. So hopefully we can get Angie qualified. That's a great prize, and I'll tell you what, whoever gets that, they're set for a full year. $10,000 worth of groceries. Man. So weather-wise, let's hit the weather because there is going to be some active weather that we have to deal with as we head into tonight and also tomorrow night. We're looking at scattered storms developing here evening onward. I think we'll see scattered storms developing after 8 o'clock, but a better chance of storms around the midnight hour through about 3 a.m., 4 a.m., that looks to be the key time frame right now. And some of those storms expected to be severe, and it looks like damaging winds and large hail will be the main threat with that as we bottom out in the 60s tonight. And then tomorrow, rinse and repeat. Might see a few leftover early morning storms, then we'll turn partly cloudy. Mid-80s again tomorrow, humid. And then another round of storms, and again, some of those are likely going to be severe Friday night as the main threat, once again, damaging winds and large hail. Now, we can't totally rule out any tornadic activity, but it does look like the main threat will be the damaging winds and large hail. And then after that blows through Friday night, then we are setting the stage for a hot Saturday. In fact, excessive heat watches are in effect for the Southern Valley and into Lakes Country, where heat index readings could get 100 to 105. And then Sunday, we'll have a cold front swing through about lunchtime. So we won't realize the full heat here in the FM area. Now, the heat might hang on a little bit longer in Lakes Country as that front kind of stalls just to the east of the valley. So we'll wait and see how that pans out. But Sunday should be a little cooler, less humid as winds turn to the northwest and highs into the 80s. And then cooler 70s next week. A couple chances of rain, most of that coming. We could see a little Sunday into Monday, but I think the better chance for rain coming the middle and latter part of next week. So kind of an active weather pattern. And the next 2 nights, you might want to put those cars inside.
Little hail damage?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, like I said, the main threat, damaging winds and large hail, but I know Ken was asking me earlier on news. Is there any chance for tornadoes? There's always a chance, but the setup is not ideal for that. So that's good news.
Selfishly speaking, I'd really like to avoid hail damage at this point. We've got some nice looking crop out there. I was in our wheat field last night. Drove on over, took a look at our wheat field, and again, for those of you who want to take a little drive and find it, you can easily find it a mile south of the junction of County Road 34 and County 11. If you're looking for it's more specific, it is in Gardner Township, Section 29, the northwest quarter. And feel free to do that because on our sign is a QR code. And if you go find the field, click the QR code, you are registered to win a $100 gas gift card. Additionally, we want to hear your guesses on what our bushels of wheat will be at harvest. How many bushels are we going to raise? And I'm excited to see people starting to drop that information. You can email it to me, ag@flagfamily.com. You can also find us on our Facebook and YouTube pages, Weather and Ag in Focus with WDAY. And you can find us on Acres TV as well. Go ahead.
And good news.
Did someone call the JLA insurance phone line?
They sure did.
That's
and
awesome.
Unfortunately, Angie couldn't stick around, but it was Angie.
Oh, good.
She did call. So, Angie, congratulations. You qualify. Make sure you got to be there on July 10th over at Kingpins
Yes.
and we'll be announcing exactly that our winner. So, congratulations to Angie from Horace.
And thank you to Kingpins, All Sagar Meats, and North Dakota State Services for their part as being sponsors for the $10,000 Great Grocery Giveaway. That wheat field, by the way, I don't want it to get hailed on. It's really lush right now. We had a heavy seeding population. We have very little weed pressure. And when you have that population and the field was clean to start with, you're shading out potential weed problems out in the field. I didn't see any disease pressure. That was nice. I also believe that there's been some fungicide that's been applied to our wheat field. We're at about the jointing stage in our wheat.
How tall is that?
So for me, it's still not quite knee high. How's that sound?
Okay.
Don't worry. I get calls for the 4th of July with short corn. Folks are like, I'd like my corn to be knee high by the 4th of July. Could you stand in it?
Yeah.
So right now our wheat looks really good. I would prefer not to get any hail damage to it.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Or wind. I mean, you don't want wind damage with that either.
Yeah, and we're getting big enough where wind's not going to be terribly hard on us. As our wheat progresses and you start getting head development, then all of a sudden it's that extra weight at the top and you get a lot of wind and now your wheat will tip over.
Right.
So there's a fine line in there.
We don't need that. All right. So we got a caller, Terry, on line 1. You got a question for me, Terry. Go ahead. What's up?
Say, Dean, I was just wondering something. When you do your forecasts, have you ever considered like putting or adding the dew point, especially in the summer? Because I guess I learned from Wheeler back in the day, and I just got so used to, if it's 65, 70, it's going to be kind of miserable.
Oh, yeah. And, we could do that. Absolutely, Terry. Absolutely.
That'd be fine.
Yeah.
Usually my deodorant tells me the dew point.
Yeah, right.
But
and then the other question I had is, what is the name of the manufacturer that does the rain gauges?
it is Darter Plastics out of Fergus Falls, Minnesota.
Darter. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they used to be productive alternatives.
Correct.
And I believe Darter bought them out. Yeah.
And Terry, don't forget to listen every Wednesday when we do Wednesday weather trivia because you might just win one of those special rain gauges.
Oh, and I try.
Yeah.
Oh,
Please
I knew
keep
the hail
trying.
one too.
Please keep
I knew
trying.
the hail one.
Oh.
I knew the hail one.
You know what? And then also send me your bushel guess for our wheat because if you guess the right bushel, I'll give you a rain gauge for that.
You know something? I could throw a number at you. Yeah. Okay.
Good deal. Well, Terry, thanks for calling Weather and Ag in Focus. Have a great day, man. All righty. He's got a good point. I mean, we are going to see those humidity levels increase. That's the reason for the heat, the excessive heat watch is due to those high dew points. And the real field temperature is, whenever it's triple digit, those dew points are going to be in the mid to upper 60s. Once it gets to 70 up here, that's very miserable. So, all right, we're coming up on break. Markets are coming up here. And
quick correction, I was told Darter, not Fergus Falls, Becker, Minnesota. Darter Plastics in Becker, Minnesota, Terry. Look for it there.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
There you go.
Okay.
So when we come back, we have a special guest in house, and this was in request of one of our listeners.
On Bonnie and Friends in the morning, we had a question about why milk gets weighed in hundredweight not just in gallons, etc. And why does milk have a different weight? Water weighs differently than milk with densities and so forth. Yeah, the look on your face, Dean, then we're going to need to talk about this more. And so I know how that exists, but I don't know how to explain it. So I called the guy who can, and that's J.W. Schroeder. He is retired NDSU dairy extension specialist, and we're going to have that conversation about dairy and all things around it just after this. Welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. I feel like today is Dairy Day, and it's perfect because June is Dairy Month. July is ice cream month. I brought in some Pride Dairy ice cream the other day, although I still owe Addison. I did not find the Juneberry flavor for you yet.
I've got a craving
Wait,
for
isn't
Juneberry.
there some in the freezer still?
There's black licorice butterbrickle and legendary vanilla.
Oh.
Okay, so whose idea was the black licorice one?
I believe Jay was talking about it on his show, and someone brought it in for him to try.
I've lost all respect for the man.
Oh, stop. It's not the end of the world.
Black licorice, really?
It was fine.
Mm. You should never have an ice cream and just be like, that was fine.
Okay, I'll remember that.
That's what the Juneberry is for.
Yes.
You know, that's outstanding.
Well, in a good news sort of way, our guest will be more than fine. And we are joined today in studio with J.W. Schroeder. J.W. is the retired NDSU Dairy Extension Specialist. I remember him from my years of FFA and being in college because that was the go-to guy for dairy. And so when I got a question on Bonnie's show in the mornings, that was who I called.
Well, it's great to be here. It's been a long time since I've been behind the mic. I've been retired now for going on my 9th year. And I realize how fast it goes by, but
It changes quickly.
And this is nice studio. Wow.
No folding chairs in here.
No.
All right. So in that regard, your background, even before being dairy specialist, was heavily involved in NDSU extension.
Yeah, if I can go back in time just a
Yes.
little bit.
Yeah.
My dad came home from Korea. They were already married and started their family about 3 years later. When my grandfather retired from farming, my dad moved on that place. My grandparents had moved there in September, got married in September of 1923, so that farm's been in our family for over 100 years. And on that time, there's always been dairy. There's been all kinds of livestock, but there's always been dairy. So my dairy roots run deep back into the 20s and the 30s, if I can reach back that far in my genetic pool.
Right.
But yes, I grew up on a dairy farm. We had livestock and did a lot of farming and put up a lot of forage for dairy. And I guess that's why I developed my keen interest in it and my passion for dairy. We had a registered Holstein herd. I started my first herd with money from a 4-H project.
Oh, perfect.
And bought that first cow in 1964.
How much?
That's when I developed.
How much was the cow back in 1964?
How much was it? I think I paid $425
Wow.
for her.
For a whole cow.
Yeah, for a whole cow, yes.
I would like everybody who's in the beef industry or in the dairy industry right now to stop and take a moment and think about how much you have to pay for a cow today. 'Cause
Oh, boy, yeah.
425, you said?
Yes.
Not going to
For a
even.
registered Holstein cow.
That's not buying you a calf, like
No.
a 3-day bottle calf right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that active in, we didn't have FFA in Carrington at that time. That's where I
wow.
went to high school. Of course, it's a very active,
Now.
exceptionally successful program they have there, but I was active in 4-H and through my county agents that were involved with judging, livestock and dairy judging, managed to make us a national trip. So that really fetid my interest in going to NDSU, where I pursued an animal science degree and production option. And graduated in May of '75 and immediately started with the NDSU Extension Service on June 1st, in which I was in, got my training in Pembina County, then I was in Oliver County, then I took leave without pay to go to Colorado State to get my master's degree,
Okay.
where I got more in animal science with muscle biology, then came back, was at Ward County and Minot for a couple of years, and then 11 years in Bottineau as the county chair there before the opportunity presented itself for me to come to NDSU. And when I arrived at NDSU, I started working on my PhD, a 7-year program of going to school at night and working full-time during the day, but developing the extension dairy program that I'm very proud of and worked with for, well, I guess it was a total of 41 years with NDSU.
I feel like at this point I should have asked harder questions to get this started today. Probably should have asked a lot harder questions.
Okay.
We'll see what they look like. Okay, so to test that knowledge, let's start at where my listener question came in. And we were talking about milk and the fact that we weigh milk out in hundredweight and that we weigh it differently than we talk about a gallon of water or anything like that. And so folks were just curious, why do we weigh milk in that respect?
It's really out of convenience and for marketing. If you're buying product, and product, regardless of what product we're talking about, animal products, feed products, you're going to buy them by weight because they're going to vary by volume. There's an inconsistency among products. So to be the most fair and the most consistent and the most accurate, we do it by weight. However, on the consumer side, marketing products have been at the grocery shelf have been developed over the years based on volume. And so you buy a gallon of milk, a quart of cream, a can of your favorite beverage, whatever it is. But then, so you can see the conflict here, or potential conflict, is we have the mass of an ounce of weight, and then we have the volume of a mass. So the volume of a product isn't going to weigh the same as the mass of a product, and that creates some confusion. So really, it's marketing. If you look far enough back into history, at one time, dairy products were picked up at the farm in 100-pound cans.
Oh,
and sell
yes.
100 weights. And that just stuck with the industry in 100 weights. So we still talk in 100 weights. Well, what's a 100 weight? Well, you can divide milk, divide that weight by 8.6 pounds per gallon, and you can figure out how many gallons of milk that is, or how many gallons of milk a cow is producing, for example.
I feel stupid because I've always just known it was 100 weight. I never even thought to use the milk can analogy, because everybody knows what a milk can looks like. Well, not everybody, but a lot of us do.
Yeah, it's easy to visualize. You may not have picked one up. I had to carry them when I was a kid. So I know where they were.
I actually have my grandpa's. I have one of his milk cans.
I have mine too, with my grandfather's name on it yet.
Okay, so this helps us put it in perspective as to the why. But that's not the only question we're going to ask, and we have lots more. So we're going to go into our bottom of the hour news, and when we return, again, we'll continue with our guest, J.W. Schroeder. He is retired dairy extension specialist from NDSU. And for those who want to ask questions, we'd be happy to take them. You can reach us on the JLA Insurance phone line, 701-293-9000. Welcome back into Weather and Ag in Focus, where we get to talk all about dairy because June is Dairy Month. And to highlight that, we have with us a guest today who is J.W. Schroeder. He is the retired NDSU Extension Specialist in dairy. And we were just talking off air about some trivia type questions. So do you want to do the one about the cream and the milk?
Yeah, to help you recall what we were just talking about, volume versus weight or mass, and the difference. If this next time you have a trivia, which is heavier than a quart of milk or a quart of cream?
All right. So any
I'm
guesses?
guessing cream because isn't cream thicker?
So if you think about like I've talked about pasteurization before, where cream will rise to the top. So does that help answer it?
If you took the two and poured them together, which one rises to the top?
The cream.
The cream does. So
the cream
on a
is
volume
lighter.
basis, if they're exactly the same volume, milk is heavier.
Heavier.
Skim milk's going. I probably should have said skim milk. Skim milk is going to be heavier than cream.
Okay.
So that's the density thing. Hence, you buy on weight versus that. So now, if take that trivia one step further, if somebody would ask you which is heavier, a pound.
A
Switch
pound.
to pound. A pound of milk or a pound of gold. You're going to go, what are you going to say? Oh, that's a pound's a pound.
Yeah.
Right, but it's
No,
not.
it's not.
So because I was in my head thinking, wait a minute, but that's going to be different.
Our traditional marketing pound is based on 16 ounces to a pound. Precious metals are traded on the troy ounce. So this is the tricky question, which has 14 ounces per ounce. So which is heavier? Milk, a pound of milk is going to be heavier than a pound
of
of
troy
gold.
ounce. Yeah, of gold.
Of gold.
Of gold, yeah.
But if the question said which is heavier, an ounce of milk versus an ounce of gold,
Then the gold wins.
the gold wins because it's denser.
Yes.
It's heavy. So see,
Well, I didn't know. Today we went to engineering school, Dean.
We could have given away a rain gauge with one of those.
yeah, there you go.
Terry is yelling
My
at
rain
his
gauge has
radio
a leak
right
in
now. And we don't think about that on a daily basis. Even the fact that a gallon of water weighs differently than a gallon of milk,
That's
because we
right.
just call them a gallon.
That's right.
But their weights are different. So we have to keep that in mind. And that's probably not something that we hear folks talk about very often, to be honest.
And when we're buying product by the quart or the gallon, now the differences are so small that buying it by you're not losing something. But you've ever opened a package of cereal?
Yep.
Ever opened a package of cereal and thought the box is only half full?
Right.
But what does it say on the bottom? By weight.
By weight.
So why the box is that big? I don't know the answer to that. But it's by weight, and weight is going to be more accurate, and weight is what you're paying for. So it's just an awareness
Absolutely.
observation there.
So this may be a little bit far-fetched then, but if you're talking in that realm about the weights are different, can milk from different breeds weigh differently? Does milk weigh heavier from a Holstein than from a brown Swiss or anything like that?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even know if that was a good question.
Yes, because our breed, there's 6 major breeds.
Okay, so Holstein, brown Swiss, milking shorthorn, Jersey, Guernsey.
Ayrshire.
Oh, okay.
There
we go.
Very good. You had
Ayrshire,
5 of them, and you would have gotten the 6th one if I gave you a chance.
It's only because Addison loves a milking shorthorn, so that was for you, pal.
But the composition of these breeds, many things can affect the composition of milk. The diet, for example. And in this case, we're talking about breeds, the nutrition affects it. There's many things that affect. So in the case of the breeds, a Jersey breed is the highest in milk fat.
Okay.
Over 5%. So that milk on we can start using the volume versus the mass thing, it's going to change. It's going to be higher in fat.
Okay.
So if you had both Jerseys and Holsteins at your mind, Holsteins are notoriously lower in it.
Okay.
In fat compared to, but they give a much higher volume of milk, so you get a greater total yield.
Yes.
But if you weren't using weights, now one person is getting maybe more than the market, the other is getting less than the market. Or for our agronomists or our agrologists out there, A bushel of wheat is 60 pounds.
Right.
But every bushel of wheat doesn't weigh 60 pounds.
Right.
We use a bushel basket, which is a volumetric measure, but if we didn't weigh it, and your elevator man would be quick to pick up on it, he's going to buy it by weight. He's not going to be buying it by volume.
Yes.
And you can see the inconvenience if you bring in a semi and you had to measure it with a bushel basket.
Yep.
Take a long time.
Yeah.
Same with milk. You were doing hundreds of gallons of milk into a semi.
Yeah.
Trying to do it by volume would be impractical. So
Well, I realized when you said that about the bushel of wheat weighs 60 pounds, I weigh well over a couple of bushels.
Oh, man. Now, question. So how long, and a lot of people might not know this either, how long does it take from milking the cow, from the milk to get through the process and to the grocery store where everybody sees it? Approximately how long does that take?
Like, are we talking hours kind of thing? Like, you're wondering that, like, the length of time, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, from the time you're milking the cow to the pasteurization process, how long does it take from the time you milk the cow till it gets to the store?
about 36 hours.
Okay.
Let's walk you through
Yeah.
dairy. Take the Van Vodoff dairy, which I was just doing a tour there.
Okay, so
And-
Van Vodoff Dairy is at Carrington,
Carrington.
and we're going to talk about pasteurized milk, correct? Or are you
well-
going to talk raw milk?
We're starting with raw milk.
Okay.
See, so they have 2.5 semi-loads of milk go out of there. They're the largest dairy in the state, and
Yep.
they do a wonderful job. If you've never been there, they do tours every year. You're missing out by not being there. You could pitch a picnic basket in the middle of their feed alley.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
that
that
nice.
clean.
Oh,
It's
Yeah.
just remarkable. But not to venture off, when that the milk never sees human hands. When they prep the cows and put on the claw or the milker that takes the milk, it immediately goes at their facility into the basement, or it goes into a cooler to try to get it down below 45 degrees, because a cow's body heat is about 104, 103, and then so the milk coming out of the udders around 100 degrees. We got to get it cooled as quick as possible, because
It's almost
all
hot chocolate.
foods,
Right.
all foods can spoil.
Sure.
So you want to cool it as quick as possible, and then they put it into a semi. That semi is locked. Nobody sees it or touches it until it gets to the plant, where they take the seal off, and then they take a sample to know what that composition thing we were talking about.
Hold on, those semis are chilled, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just
yes.
a thought there. Yep.
You see the compressors on there. So now it goes into the semi. A lot of times they'll go right to the semi. They don't even have to go into a silo. The silos are there in case of snowstorm and they can't get the truck in. But yes, the milk is cooled as quick as possible and hauled into the plant, whether it's coming to Cass Clay in town or theirs goes to Perham.
Right.
That as long as it takes the couple hours it takes the truck to leave the farm to get there, they analyze the milk and make sure it passes inspections, and then dump the milk and start the processing.
Yeah.
What is processing? Well, the first thing is a clarification step. They basically spin it to see if there's anything in the milk that they don't want in the milk. In the old days that was important because we had open pail milking by hand or whatever. And
You
had
milked a cow by
debris.
hand, you carried an open pail and dumped it in a bucket or in a bulk tank. What went with? Everything. Some flies, a little bit of straw.
Potentially.
Yeah, it could happen.
Potentially. A fly might have gotten it, In this case, it never sees human hands, but they
Right.
still go all those selection process.
Yep.
So they spin it to clarify it and then immediately start separating the cream from the butter fat or the milk fat from the fat. And the reason they do that is then they can start mixing it back for skim, which have almost no fat in it,
Right.
1%, which is low fat, 2%, or whole milk, which is typically was 3.25. Now, the milk coming from the Van Vodoff dairy I use as an example, their butter fat or their milk fat is almost 4%. So now you've got extra fat. Where does that extra fat go? The best ice cream you can eat.
Oh, yes.
And so every component has value, but now, so you get a consistent product at the store, they separate it and mix it back. In the meantime, once it's mixed, then it's pasteurized and then homogenized.
Yes.
And the homogenized process is just pressure to break up the fat globulus, because it's really an emulsion or a suspension that fat would, because it's lighter,
Yep.
will rise to the top. So now if we push it through a smaller orifice to break up those particles, and the homogenation keeps it then in suspension in the milk. And that's what gives milk its white color.
And as that's going on, do you take it all the way to the milk stage before you start worrying about processing into butter and cheese, or do you do that at some other point along that tree of progress, you might say?
Up to now, we've talked about what just goes into what's referred to as fluid milk, the
Right.
milk you drink. But then
Right.
there's more. You can't drink all of our milk that we produce.
Right.
So then it's diverted into other products like butter. Milk, it's a rather complicated process, a class 1, 2, 3, and 4, where you have the fluid milk and the soft products, the cheeses and the dry milk. Some milk eventually winds up into dry milk products that are sold that might be marketed in areas where you have to reconstitute it because they don't have refrigeration, those kind of things. Or in baking products is a big place where it's typically used. So I guess I kind of forgot the question.
No, because all of that milk has to go into something. Because like you said, we can't drink all the fluid milk that we have. So we're going into butters and cheeses, and there's a point along that production line where that happens. And frankly, here in the U.S., we do have a decrease in the amount of fluid milk that people consume. But our dairy consumption is going up because of all the cheese and yogurt. And post-pandemic, everybody's in love with butter again. So those are big reasons why we have the milk production we do. But
milk from animals, from mammals, is more bioavailable to the human than the plant sources, who are basically extracts colored white and then want to be modeled after the gold standard of milk.
And so our butter and cheese, when that milk gets to perm, it doesn't have to hit 1%, 2% or whole milk before it gets diverted off into being butter or cheese. That happens before the finished milk product.
You're dead on. You're right that it gets diverted. They know how much they need for a particular production that day, and then divert to like June, July, big ice cream months. So more of it's being diverted to those products as well. And then nice thing about cheese is it can be stored, where most of our other products, milk has a limited shelf life as long as it's properly refrigerated. And that being between 32 and 38 degrees in your refrigerator and unopened, it'll last quite a long time. But typically we say up to that it should be consumed within a week, maybe 10 days of the date on the package. So you buy it today, which is the 19th, it's probably going to have 7-day advance date on that, and it should be good beyond that. Now, that's assuming that you're taking proper care of it.
Right.
If you set it on the counter in the morning and then went to do something, when it's open, somebody drank out of the milk carton. There's all sources of reasons why that would contaminate the milk. And sitting out warm, there is always some bacteria that's available. And so warm temperatures and the moisture and the goodies that are in milk will allow bacteria to grow pretty fast. But if you're taking care of it, I think people forget that, because a can of soda, you can throw it in the trunk and find it 6 months later. But there's no nutrition in it either. There's only about 2 cents of product in a can of soda, where you're getting one of the most energy-dense foods and 13 essential nutrients. Pretty hard to beat milk as a complete, complex food.
Even athletes have recognized that. One of the highest used or the most used products in high school athletics is chocolate milk as a post-recovery for high school and college athletics, because milk is great for those athletes to rebuild muscle strength.
And the chocolate milk gives you, there's some sugars and flavors added to it, but now you get that carbohydrate-protein ratio, which is important to have within 45 minutes after a workout.
Wow.
There's some very good research that documents that, and universities that are using it.
There are so many areas in which we could cover. We didn't even get to talking about like the beef and dairy genetics. And this morning I had a headline story about camel dairies. Like there's a camel dairy in Wyoming, and they must think I'm their stalker, because I keep trying to get them to come on air and I haven't gotten a response from them yet. But this just tells me we have a lot more to talk about in the realm of dairy, and I'm sure that we will. So JW, thanks for taking the time today to come in and visit about June is Dairy Month.
You're very welcome. It's been a treat being here, and North Dakota has a long dairy tradition, and people still talk about the dairy department that used to be on campus where they could drive up and buy their milk or get some dairy products. Of course, with development, that building is long gone, but the first artificial insemination that was done in North Dakota was done in a dairy animal with the first extension dairy specialist, Clarence Olson, on a Jersey dairy farm that was where West Fargo now resides.
Oh, at the time it was still farmland.
There's a tremendous history there.
We'll talk more about that. So
Excellent. Well, JW, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We'll talk about how chocolate milk comes from brown cows next time you're here.
Okay.
Oh, the look on Bridgette's face. That was.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we're going to have a recap of the weather, which does include the chance of severe weather. We'll time that out for you coming up right after the break. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus, 1:53 in the afternoon. I want to recap the weather real quick here because we are under a slight risk for severe weather as we head into tonight and also tomorrow night as well. Back-to-back nights here. You might not get a whole lot of sleep as we are expecting strong storms to develop after about 8, 9 o'clock tonight and then become a little more widespread, it looks like, as we head towards the midnight hour. So, again, expect some strong storms to severe storms overnight tonight. We'll bottom out around 63. Main threat is going to be damaging winds and large hail. And then tomorrow, almost a repeat of today. I think we'll see a few more clouds. We'll call it partly cloudy for tomorrow, and it's going to be a little more humid. Terry, those dew points tomorrow are going to be in the mid-60s, and they'll be in the upper 60s as we head into Saturday. So very muggy conditions coming on around Saturday. And another round of severe weather, a good bet on Friday night. And once again, main threat will be damaging winds and large hail. And then a hot start to the weekend with temps in the low to mid-90s on Saturday with heat index readings about 100. Some spots a little higher than that.
Oops, there's my mic. As my grandma said, this weather's, my blood's too thick for this weather. Speaking of temperatures, actually, it's a good thing JW didn't leave the studio yet because I had a listener send a question in as we were talking and said, a cow's normal body temperature is 101.7 degrees. He felt that 103 to 104 would be a fever. Yeah, it would be. Yep, would be.
My mistake, and thank them for.
Yeah, thank you, Daryl, for sending that in just as a little care. You know, the thing is we like getting those corrections because as we're talking and we're thinking about the next thing we got to point out, once in a while we might accidentally say something that we got to correct. And that's okay. We're fine with that.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, good deal. And then much cooler on Sunday. We'll have a cold front coming through, it looks like, on Sunday shortly after lunchtime. So Lakes Country could remain hot on Sunday, but I think here in the valley and westward, we'll cool things off pretty quickly on Sunday. Still a few question marks. Do we get any storm activity as that cool front swings through? And right now it looks like most of that will be off to the north of the FM area. But again, we'll fine-tune that forecast as we get into the weekend. But like I said, the next 2 nights we do stand the chance for severe storms with the main threat being large hail and damaging winds.
I also have a message here from Chad, one of our listeners. He said, this is perfect weather to get out there and spray your Liberty, hot and humid. So that for those who are wondering, that's glufosinate. We have a lot of soybeans particularly that have a tolerance to glufosinate. So, yeah, if you're going to get some spraying done while
with
the
wind is
winds,
down,
get out there. We want a 0 to 10 with, we want a 3 to 10 mile an hour. Because if we're at 0, we can have temperature inversions. So we do want to make sure we're spraying in
the winds
right
will
time.
ramp up a little bit tomorrow and Saturday. So probably those 2 days, probably not. Today, though, yeah, beautiful.
So additionally, next week, one of my stops next week is Watertown, South Dakota, because NCBA has a stockmanship and stewardship program. For those of you as beef producers who want to get your beef quality assurance certifications done, you can do that next Saturday instead of doing it online. You can be a part of live cattle handling demonstrations, get your BQA certification the day prior on Friday. That's the day I'll be in Watertown. There'll be discussion on on-farm biosecurity planning and then going through real-world scenarios and how to apply that because we have more and more instances of foreign animal disease like foot and mouth. Also, we've had a lot of discussions even on this show about the New World screwworm and the fact that the infestation has moved closer to our border. That's why we have closed the border between the U.S. and Mexico is to try to keep that pest at bay. Unfortunately, it can also come across in wildlife like deer and so forth, and they don't they don't stop at customs, say, geez, here I come and I got this flesh-eating parasite under my hide. Just thought I'd let you know. So for those who want to participate in that, you can go ahead and register. And again, that's in Watertown, South Dakota. That'll be next Thursday, the 26th through Saturday, June 28th. And stop by on Friday. South Dakota Cattlemen's Association is also doing a social that night. So you get an opportunity to visit with all those folks. And NCBA CEO Colin Woodall will be there. And here in North Dakota, our Stockmen's Association just wrapped up their spring regional roundups. They had great attendance. Really appreciate all the folks who got out to those as well. Many of these same discussions are had. What's one unique difference that we do here in the state of North Dakota is all of our brand inspections, et cetera, are handled through North Dakota Stockmen's Association. And I believe this is our year in the cycle that if you need to renew your brand, best get that done very quickly. You don't want that to lapse and lose the brand that you love.
Right. No doubt. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon on Weather and Ag in Focus. Again, keep an eye to the sky later tonight. Have your NOAA weather radio handy and make sure that's on in case those storms do get severe. So for Bridgette, myself, once again, thank you. The Jay Thomas Show, it's coming up next.